going live. We're going live. We are live. Look at that. Hello, everyone. This is the pre-show of today's 2/20/12/01 Core 1 A+ study group. This is where in this next 10 minutes, I make sure that all of my ducks are in the proverbial row. And so far, so good. Looks like we are recording. Our video inputs look super good. Laptop is working and updated with the most recent presentation. For those of you keeping track or score or whatever we're calling it, we've got the presentation you can see online. In fact, if you'd like to make sure that you can connect to and answer interactively the questions that we will be posing in this first hour, follow the link on your screen. It's right here behind me, professormesser.com/QA, and see if you can connect to and put your virtual pin in our digital pin cushion here. There it is. Oh, there's our map of the world. Got a number of people already checking in. Most North America. Where is everybody? What's going on? Hello, chat room. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's doing okay. We have a lot to go through today. All new questions, of course. Every study group has all new questions, except for that first one. That's on purpose. That's intentional. Really, I guess the first two, if you count this as a question. So you've got that going for you. I have, I think, all of my things set up here. Everything appears to be running okay. I'm currently working on a new backup network connection because most of the time we're doing these live streams and everything is beautiful and perfect, and there's rainbows and unicorns dancing through the fields, and everything's great. But occasionally, on rare circumstances, we may lose our primary internet connection. That's just what happens. That's life. That's the world we live in. But the router I use for my internet connection does have the ability to constantly check on that primary link, and if the primary link is not there, we can switch over to a different setting. So I've looked at a lot of different options there, both additional ISPs, wireless connectivity, Starlink or non-terrestrial type connections. I tend to avoid non-terrestrial links. We don't tend to have that really happening. I don't tend to use those just because of the latency involved. Latency has gotten much better, granted, but there are also bandwidth challenges with that as well that we can easily get past if we work on terrestrial networks. So I have I've got a configuration set up now with a LTE type, really a 5G if it's available in my neighborhood, that will connect via 5G to a local tower and switch over to that, which for what we're doing is plenty of bandwidth, more than enough. Even LTE, we should probably do pretty well, but we will see. We'll see how that turns out. So folks in the chat room ask about Security Plus, which is fine. You can ask a question about anything you want. When is it supposed to renew? Well, we don't have any official dates, but I would expect the current Security Plus exam to still be around really until about May of next year. So you got about a year before that disappears completely. So you're good. But even so, if you have a voucher and it's good for a year, your voucher is good for any available Security Plus exam. So if suddenly tomorrow they show up and say, we're pulling the rug out from everybody and moving over to the new version now, which they never do. They always give you like a 6-month window. But if they do that tomorrow, your voucher's still good. You would just use it towards whatever available Security Plus exam is out there, and it works just great. That's my take. Got a frog that I've been trying to get rid of all morning, which is really good if you're doing a live stream, by the way. That's exactly what you want. Folks are checking in from all over the place. Look at this map. Folks are all over. Thank you for being here, everyone. We sure appreciate you joining us. I think we have a pretty good time on these things. If you do have a question that you would like me to answer for you, you can submit that question at any time during this first hour using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA or go to our live page on our website, professormesser.com/live, and I have embedded, I've stuck in the page the interface for answering the questions. So for many of you, you may not even have to go anywhere. Got our Canadian folks checking in. Folks here from Singapore and Memphis, Tennessee, and Texas. There's St. Vincent. Hope everybody's doing well down there. Folks are in the UK checking in. Montana. Got folks in the big sky checking in for that. I need to get back out there. Love it out there. As many of you know, I've mentioned on other streams, I got Kim folk in Montana, so we do go up there from time to time. It's kind of nice. Hey, New York City, Atlanta's here. There's some Floridians. Pensacola, good to have you here. We are connecting to you from our worldwide headquarters here in the central part of Florida. So I don't think I've ever left the state. I've always lived in Florida. But it's so big. I've lived in North Florida and South Florida, now Central Florida. It's like you lived in 3 different states, quite honestly. It's different no matter where you go. The beaches are different than the middle of the state. The middle of the state's different than the north or the south. It's fantastic. And always something interesting and new to do. Hey, New Mexico. Hello, Charlotte, North Carolina. Phoenix is here. Maryland, my Maryland has checked in. India's here. Nigeria's checking in. Folks from all over, thank you for being here. We got about 3 minutes and change before we get things going. And we'll do our live stream information. We've got all brand new questions for you. How well do you know your Core 1 information? We will find out today. Most of you have been doing very good lately. I've tried to up my game just a bit. I try to make the questions, it's difficult. I don't want to make the questions too hard, but I also want to make the questions something that we can use to learn from. So to do that, I need to ask questions that perhaps you don't know about, or maybe having that feedback, that positive feedback's a good thing. These are always the challenges, of course, to be able to make that happen. All right, 2.5 minutes to go. We've got a lot there to work through. As I'm going through this and looking through, I've been trying to make more drive space. It's my biggest problem. This whole live stream, drive space is my biggest issue. Always is. I should probably purchase some more SSDs or more offline storage. It's a complicated set of things, isn't it? How many more terabytes and terabytes and terabytes do you stick in the corner just so you can keep things in a little pile and not delete? That's my problem. I have a digital hoarding problem where I just don't want to delete anything, but I'm never going to use it. I'm never going to touch it again. Yes, but I must have it in a pile of things. So I have to really get in there and clean things out and make that happen. I think it's more of, I've got it well organized. I just need to pick and choose the things that I can remove and get them out of the way because they are in the way. It's a constant give and take with me. There's never enough storage space. There's never enough storage space. In the nature of the beast. Sort of how it goes. We got about a minute and 15 seconds. We'll get things going here. Be hitting that mute button a few more times here today if I can't straighten this mess out. Get all of that to happen. We're also going through in the second hour is where I answer your questions. So someone sent me a note the other day. What can we ask questions about? Well, whatever you'd like. I don't know that I'll answer every question that you could possibly ask of me. Well, I know I won't. But most of you are pretty good at sticking to technology or something in the technology news or Security Plus or A Plus or Network Plus or just IT in general. We can talk about any of those things. Go through the list of stories that we have about IT and the things that I have seen in the industry, including things about data centers. I don't need a data center. This is my data center. It's all on one desk. I've spent years getting my data center shrunk down into a desk, and it finally is here. Speaking of something finally being here, 12 noon. Look at that. Top of the hour. Let's do a live stream. We'll bring up our keynote. We will get a green light on the keynote. Love it. It'll flicker there. There we go. Click, click, click. Everything here looks good. Gosh, I think it's time to do a live stream, everybody. What do you think? I think so too. Let's get things going right now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2026 Professor Messer 220-1201. That is the CompTIA A+ Core 1 exam objectives. Those are the ones that we will be describing, we will be talking about, and asking questions about during this 1-hour webinar on Q&A. We're just going to talk a lot about questions and answers specific to those exam objectives. We would love it if you were here live, that you would join along with us. All you need to do is go to the URL on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. You just go to that one screen and everything is there. If you are already on our website at professormesser.com/live, I have embedded that screen into that page, so you don't have to go to a separate window if you don't want to. You have the choice. You can decide exactly what to do, and from that one view, I will be providing you with information on questions, answers. You'll be able to follow along all from that single page. What could be easier? Just a simple thing to go through to figure that out. In fact, if that is a page you are on, let's see if it works. We're going to do a test here. This is actually a question from a previous study group. We call this our rewind question to see if you're able to get in and answer questions on that particular page. I'll also remind you, if you haven't joined us before, our standing rules are please do not put the answer into the chat room, and please do not put any hints into the chat room. We're going to try to answer everything online. Instead, you want to use the URL professormesser.com/QA. There it is, to be able to answer that question. Your question of the week, your rewind question of the week, is this one that asks, after a drive failure, a system administrator has replaced the bad drive in the array and restored from a backup. Which of the following would describe this array? Would it be RAID 0+1, RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, or RAID 1+0? If you think you know the answer, again, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That gives you at least something to work through. That might give you an idea of where you might want to lean with this question. We will come back to this answer, and we'll talk all about the answers that we have here in just a moment. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Welcome to our monthly study group. We always do a study group once a month on Core 1, once a month on Core 2. We have a Network Plus study group. We have a Security Plus study group. There's always something going on. But when we're not doing a live stream, you can, of course, find our entire video training course available to watch for free on the internet. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube to be able to view our playlists for all of those courses. We have a daily A+ pop quiz question that we post either in your inbox or through professormesser.com/X/Instagram/LinkedIn. And of course, when we're not doing a live stream, you can always catch us over in our Discord along with thousands and thousands of other people that are also studying for their A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. That is over on our Discord. You can join that at professormesser.com/Discord. Also want to remind you that sometime during this first hour, I will give you instructions on how you can earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU. That is something that you will need if you want to renew your certification. If you don't have your certification yet, then this probably doesn't mean anything to you. And in fact, you can't use these CEUs until you are certified. So another one of those things to keep in mind. If you're sometime in this first hour, just keep an ear out. You'll be able to hear and get the instructions on how to earn the email that will contain your CEU certification. Let you know that we will be talking about the A+ exam today. The most current A+ exam is the 220-1201 and the 220-1202. You might also see these referred to as version 15, V15. I know, doesn't make any sense, but there it is. That's the version. We expect this exam obviously was released in March 25th, and we expect it to be retired around the 2028 in September. So you got a few years left before you even have to worry about that part. The exam itself, there are two separate exams. Both of them are 90 minutes each. For the 1201, you will need to score a 675 on a scale between 100 and 900. For the Core 2, you need to do a little bit better. You need to do a 700 to be able to pass that exam. Once you pass both exams, you are officially A+ certified. And when that happens, you are certified for a 3-year time frame, at which point you would have needed to renew your certification for another 3 years to maintain that A+ cert. So today we're kind of covering a couple of bases. We're covering the folks that are trying to get the certification for the first time, and this is also a place you can come to get some CEUs if that's how you choose to renew your certification. Also, sometime during the next 24 hours or so, you'll notice that the YouTube video description of this live stream will be updated with detailed timestamps, thanks to my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's going through and watching this on a replay, probably at 2x speed, so that she can put all of those detailed timestamps into the YouTube video description, something that perhaps you can help find what you need very, very quickly by using those timestamps. Might be something useful during your studies. We can also, as I mentioned, when we're not here, head over to Discord. If you'd like more of an interactive Q&A with folks, you can build your own test rooms. You can manage who's able to come in and out of those rooms. You could do a video stream, an audio stream. We try to make it something that anybody who's studying for any type of certification exam can show up, create their own study room, and have others attend and help learn along with you. It's a great way to study. If you'd like to learn more and join us, it's over at professormesser.com/discord. Also remind you that eventually you will need to take your exam, and although I wish the exams were free, you still have to purchase those exams if you plan to take them. If you're in the US or Canada, you can certainly go to the CompTIA website and pay full price. But if you come over to professormesser.com/vouchers, I have the same vouchers, but they're discounted. You're not paying full price at professormesser.com/vouchers. Even more, if you come and purchase your voucher on our website, I'll give you something a little extra that you can't get anywhere else. That's a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. Has a list of tips and tricks, things that I've accumulated through the years that helps with my studies, and some strategies you can use during the exam itself to be able to perhaps get a few extra points. And who wouldn't want a couple of those? We need some more points on this exam. You might want to read through that before taking your exam. All of this is available with a purchase of a voucher from the CompTIA website at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about that question I asked earlier. After drive failure, a system administrator has replaced the bad drive in the array and restored from backup. Which of the following would describe this drive array? Would it be RAID 0+1, RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, or RAID 1+0? Let's see what you chose. We're going to close our poll, and we're a little bit of a rainbow here. 35% of you say that the answer is RAID 1, 30% say it's RAID 5, 20% say RAID 0, and then with 7% apiece, it's a tie between RAID 0+1 and RAID 1+0. So these are different RAID types, the redundant array of inexpensive, or as it's known today, independent disks. This is commonly associated with spinning drives, but it doesn't have to be. You can also have RAID arrays that are set up as SSDs, for example. The one that we were looking for in this example, though, you'll notice that the administrator replaced a drive that had gone bad. That's something that often happens. But then the administrator performed a restoration from an existing backup. Well, why would they need to do that if you're running RAID? Well, there is one RAID type. Although the R in RAID is for redundant, there is a RAID type that does not provide redundancy of data, only redundancy of devices, if you want to even think of it that way. And that means that the RAID type we were really looking for was RAID 0. RAID 0 is often referred to as striping. RAID 0 is the striping part, where you have parts of the information are split or striped between two different physical drives. So you, for example, have disk 0 and disk 1. Part of the data is put on disk 0. Another part of the data is put on disk 1. Another part of the data on 0. Another part on 1. So you're effectively splitting the data in two pieces and putting it on two separate drives. That certainly splits your data apart, but your challenge, of course, is if you lose any of those drives, even though you're able to write to them very quickly, once you lose a physical drive, you've lost half your data, which effectively is all of your data. You can't have half the data and somehow put your spreadsheet back together. You can't have half the data and somehow still have your music, your video, your audio, or whatever else you're saving. It breaks the array. You no longer have the data. So if you have to restore, you have to replace the bad drive, the only way to get data back in a RAID 0 configuration is to perform a restoration from a backup so that you can have all 100% of your data back up and running. There's no way to rebuild it. It's not stored somewhere else. There's no parity involved here. You just lose it. You lose half of your data. This is another reason we often tell you, regardless of what RAID type you are running, RAID is not backup. You still need to back up your data, even if that data is in a RAID 0, a RAID 1, or RAID 5, or any other type of RAID array. This is a good example, of course, with RAID 0, why a backup would be so critical, incredibly important. So RAID 0, obviously, the answer we were looking for. 35% of you said it was RAID 1. That was the one that got the highest number, but RAID 1 is mirroring, which means you have a duplicate of all of your data on these two drives, which means if you lose one drive, you still got 100% of your data. You don't need to perform a restoration. All you have to do is slide in the new disk, and it will start copying all of that information back over to resynchronize the data across both of those. Your data is up and running. In many cases, with a RAID 1 failure, nobody even knows that anything failed other than you because data was always still available. Obviously, you don't want to lose more than one drive in that RAID 1 configuration, but that's a different problem with a different RAID type that is outside the scope of the A+ exam. We also have, or mostly outside the scope of the A+ exam, 30% of you said RAID 5. RAID 5 uses parity. It is not an exact duplicate, but it does allow you to reconstruct the data in real time, and that means you don't need to restore from backup if you're replacing a drive with RAID 5. And RAID 1 plus 0 and RAID 0 plus 1 are a combination of RAID 1 and RAID 0 put all together. In this case, having that RAID 1 there provides you with some additional redundancy. So it would not be RAID 1 plus 0. It would not be RAID 0 plus 1. The answer here that we were looking for would be the only one that would require a restoration from backup if you happen to lose a physical drive, and that would be RAID 0. We did about the same as we did last month, but maybe we learned something more about RAID. So if any of these come up on your exam, you can remember RAID 0, a little bit different than RAID 1, RAID 5, and the other RAID types, especially when it comes to the redundancy and availability of data if you happen to lose one of those physical drives. Let's now shift gears to new questions. Let's have a look at what might be new, since that was a previous exam question, a previous study group question. Let's now go through the process of taking it up a little bit, moving it up just a notch. And by this, I mention that on your exam, you will get performance-based questions at the very beginning of your exam. I know you may be thinking the entire exam is just a bunch of multiple choice questions like this one. In fact, if you didn't know this question or answer, you didn't understand any of it, you could have taken a guess. And with the 5 answers that are there, you had a 20% chance of getting it right. On the exam, you usually only get 4 answers available, which means your percentage goes up. You could guess, and 25% of the time you're getting it right. Well, CompTIA doesn't want to make it quite so easy on you. Of course not. So at the beginning of your exam, you will get a handful of questions that are not multiple choice. In fact, the best definition of those questions is anything but a multiple choice question. So this could be a fill-in-the-blank question. It could be putting you at a command prompt. It could be a drag-and-drop question. You may have to put things in a particular order. There may be multiple steps you have to go through. CompTIA refers to these question types as performance-based questions. And performance-based questions are what you will find very early on in the exam. So there are a number of strategies associated with these, but I want to give you a performance-based question today and see how well we can do with something that isn't quite a multiple choice. And in fact, there's no 20 to 25% guessing that you're going to get out of this next question. Here is your performance-based question of the month. This is set up to be a matching question, but it asks, choose the best tool for the task. We're going to step through 8 different tools, but there are only 4 tasks listed on the screen. So we need to figure out which 4 of these 8 are going to go into that list, because there's only one tool we're going to use for each one of these. That means there will be 4 answers left over. This, by the way, is a very common thing you will see on the exam. Very often, matching questions are never a one-to-one relationship. No, those are too easy. They make it a little bit more difficult. And in fact, you could get all of the questions wrong because they don't match up that way. So let's step through each one of these tools for those of you listening in. The 8 tools are a cable tester, ONT, crimper, loopback plug, punchdown tool, injector, network tap, and tone generator. And I want you to tell me, of those tools or devices or components, which would be the best for these tasks. The first task is a user is accidentally tripped on an Ethernet cable and the RJ45 jack is now missing. So we'll need to figure out what we want to do with that. The next one is the internal security cameras require power, but the workstation switch doesn't support PoE. All right, we need something to fix that scenario, don't we? The third is a network study is capturing packets to examine encryption types. And the last one is a network provider. Great on my side. This is where you start to see there's really a person writing these. A network provider is installing a fiber link for internet access. What tool, device, or component do we need to put into that connection? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to answer that question. Now, the first one, I realize the terminology I use there could lead you down the road of choosing maybe 2 different options for that one. So for a user is accidentally tripped on an Ethernet cable and the RJ45 jack is now missing. I could have even written that to be an RJ45 connector is now missing, and it would be a different one. So I think the interpretation can be a little fuzzy there. So I'll accept either one of those answers should you give them. I think I probably meant to say RJ45 connector, but that's okay. RJ45 jack, it's a different type of connection, but we can talk about that. It's a good learning opportunity to step through. Well, what would it be if it was a jack versus a connector? Sounds like it's 2 different things. What 2 different things would it be? And which one goes with which? There you go. That's kind of how all of that works. See if you happen to know the answer. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer at any time. I know I was writing it as if it was connector, but somehow jack got put on the screen. This is sometimes we play a little fast and loose with our nomenclature. It snuck in there in this particular case, but that's okay because we can figure this out on the fly. This is the benefit of doing a study group, of course, is that we're able to work through these issues, think about the problems from different angles, really talk about why we would choose a particular answer or why we would not choose a particular answer. So you can, of course, fit all of those in there as well. There's where you go, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. A number of you are already getting the answers in place. And all I really need is you have a number and a letter. Just match those up. If you think they're already in order, say 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. Done. There's your answer. That's the answer we're looking for. Let's now, a lot of you getting your answers in. I want to make sure we got enough time to get all the answers in for this particular question. A number of them have come in already. Thank you for sending these answers in. Knowing the devices, the components is an important thing, but the exam is wanting to do more than just have you have rote memorization. They want you to really understand how you would use these components, how you would use these tools. In which scenario would you reach into your bag and pull out that particular tool? Or if somebody presented you with a problem, what is the first tool you would grab to resolve that problem? That's what these questions are asking. And there's a reason they're not being direct, because the exam is not direct. There's a reason I'm not being direct. The exam itself makes you go through a number of different steps in your head to finally get to the final correct answer. So hopefully that's leading you down that particular path as you go down that as well. Let's see how you did with this one. We'll step through each one of these questions which each one of all of these, and let's see what you think the answer is, and maybe what I think the answer is, and we'll see if it makes any sense. Our first task is a user is accidentally tripped on an Ethernet cable and the RJ45 jack is now missing. I'm also going to answer if the RJ45 connector on the cable is now missing, so that we're covering both of these bases. Now, I answered this as if it was connector. So I answered, well, if I'm missing my RJ45 connector, I'm going to need a crimper to put another connector back on that cable. To be fair, that's not what I asked. I said the jack is now missing. Maybe it was plugged into the wall, they tripped over the cable, and it just pulled the jack right out of the wall, and now the jack is just disconnected. Maybe there's cables just sitting there. If you've ever had to reconnect the jack that is in the wall, the components that are in there, they are often connected to the jack through a very small punch-down block that's really just for that particular connector. And because of that, if you're replacing an RJ45 jack, you're probably not going to use a crimper for that because it doesn't use RJ45. You're going to need a punch-down tool to be able to do that because they're little punch-down connectors on the back of that little jack. I even have pictures of that in the video where I talk about these tools, where I talk about the crimpers and the punch-down tools. So I will accept both of those for this particular answer. I know the technical correct answer, given the terms that I used, would be a punch-down block or punch-down tool on that punch-down block. But since I thought in my mind, which for some reason I'm not sure why you can't read, my mind thought RJ45 connector, so I put crimper. So there you go. We've now covered the bases. Hopefully we fixed that particular issue. Let's go to our next task, which is the internal security cameras require power. They do require power, indeed. I have some of those. Your internal security cameras require power, but the workstation switch doesn't support PoE, whatever that is. PoE, of course, is power over Ethernet. Now, if you have a switch that provides the power on the connector inside the switch, that's a beautiful configuration. You simply plug in your security cameras to your Ethernet switch, and magically they power up. You don't need a separate power connection. You don't need a power brick. You don't need a power outlet. You're running everything over the Ethernet cable itself. But what if your switch doesn't have any PoE capabilities? And in fact, that's what this task is. There's no PO in this E. We have just E. We don't have PoE. So no power over Ethernet. We're going to need something to put power on that particular cable. And I know this because I mentioned having that backup in the pre-show. I was talking about a 5G or a 5G backup that I bought for my local connection. That 5G backup required a PoE connection, which I did not have. The router that I'm using to power that backup link doesn't support PoE, so you need an injector. This is a power injector that fits in line with the existing Ethernet connection. So I have a connection coming from my switch going into the injector, and then a connection going from the injector where now it is providing power, and that injector is plugging into, in this particular case, my 5G backup or my internal security cameras. We are able to provide that PoE power because the injector is plugged into a 110 power outlet. It's providing power in some way to the injector, and the injector is simply putting that power onto those particular Ethernet wires. So that is why an injector would be the right answer for that particular task. Next on our list is a network study is capturing packets to examine encryption types. This is a good audit to have. How much of the data on your local corporate network is encrypted? How would you be able to tell? You would need to look at the packets themselves. You would need to look at every frame going over your network, maybe even capture those frames and then examine them afterwards to see just how much of this is encrypted. If you have a next generation firewall, it's probably already telling you a lot of this information. It's built into the reporting of all of those. But if you're doing this yourself, you may just want to plug in a network tap that will permanently provide you with a connection into your network to look at the raw data traversing those particular links. You're looking at the raw frames going across your network. Obviously, if this was a wireless network, that would not be the solution you would need. You don't need a network tap for wireless necessarily. But network tap on Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet or faster, these are very common things to use. There are fiber-based network taps. There are copper-based network taps for different types of copper connectivity. But that's a great way to plug into a network. You sort of break the link one time to put the tap in, and from that point forward, you can at any point on demand go grab data from the network and not affect any of the availability or throughput of that particular link. Network taps, they're a very, very useful tool. And the last task we were looking to find an answer to is, and network provider is installing a fiber link for internet access. Well, that's great, but my router doesn't have a fiber connection. Technically, my router does have a fiber connection. We're just going to go with this. By the premise, by the bit. So your network provider is bringing a fiber link into your house. You probably only have a copper connection inside of your house. Well, how do you get internet from the fiber if all you have is copper? We're going to need something that can take that internet connection from your provider and turn it into something usable. And that would be an optical network terminal, an ONT. So I have fiber to my home. My local provider provides that through a fiber drop. The fiber goes all the way up into my data closet where I've got my routers and all of my equipment. And then I have an ONT provided by my provider that converts it from their fiber network into, in my particular case, a 10 gig Ethernet link. So I've got 10 gig coming out of my ONT and plugging into my internet router. So you can think of that as kind of a conversion point between the fiber and the copper. In reality, it's doing a little bit more at the protocol level. It's more of a CSU DSU in that scenario, kind of outside the scope of what we do in A+, but it's a way to convert that from one type of network to the other, and at the same time, not just convert the physical topology, but also convert the type of data that is being sent. Maybe there's headers that are being pulled out of there, and we're converting it over to Ethernet. Kind of a switch type scenario too. So ONT, optical network terminal, would provide all of that. So those are the answers. We have a crimper where a user is accidentally tripped on an Ethernet cable and the RJ45 connector is missing. But if you suddenly realize the RJ45 jack is also damaged, you need to replace the jack, then you probably also need to have a punchdown tool. The internal security cameras require power, but the workstation switch doesn't support PoE, then you're going to need an injector. A network study is capturing packets to examine encryption types. You'll need a network tap to make that process easier. And then and network provider, I'm going with it, is installing a fiber link for internet access. Well, to convert it over to copper, we will need an ONT, an optical network terminal. Well, that means there were some of these we did not use in this case. We did not use cable tester. Cable testers are very simple devices, commonly providing you with a continuity measurement. For example, it will tell you if pin 1 on one end of the cable is connected to pin 1 on the other end of the cable, which very often is what we want. Pin 2, is pin 2 connected to pin 2 on both sides? Is pin 3 connected to pin 3 on both sides? A cable tester is a very simple tool that can provide us with a summary or a wire map showing us which pins are connected to which pins through that cable. We talked about, or did not talk about, loopback plugs. Loopback plugs are commonly used to measure and test an external physical interface on a device, like a router or switch or some other type of network component. And how it usually works is we will send traffic out of that interface. The loopback plug does exactly what the name says. It loops it back into the same device, into the same interface. Why would you send data only to receive data? Well, because we can measure that. If we send out 8 bits of data, 8 ones, we would expect to receive 8 ones. If we sent out 8 ones and we got 7 ones and 1 0, something did not go quite right. And it's probably in our physical interface itself. That's one of the beauties of having a loopback plug. I said we didn't use a punchdown tool, but in reality, that was the answer to our first task up there, a punchdown tool, especially if it was the RJ45 jack that is missing. So we're giving you credit for that one. We used it. In fact, and then lastly, a tone generator. Tone generators are used on one end of a cable along with an inductive probe on the other end of the cable to find those endpoints. You know, if you're working inside of a wiring closet or in a data center, there's about 1.3 million cables to have to sift through. How could you possibly find the right cable? Well, you put the little toner on one end, and then you run over with your probe, and you use your probe sort of to hunt around for the needle. And the needle makes noise in this case, and your probe is going to make some noises if you ever get to that point too. So hopefully that's given you some ideas of how you can use these particular tools, where they fit best, and in what scenarios you might want to use them. This is a very common thing the exam will ask you about, so make sure you are familiar with these tools, how you would use them, and in what scenarios they really fit the best. That is our performance-based question of the month. Let's flip back to more of a multiple choice question and see how we do from there. Our next question asks, a financial institution requires strict control over its data and chooses to host its cloud services within its own physical building. Which cloud deployment model is being utilized in this scenario? Is it private cloud, hybrid cloud, software as a service, public cloud, or infrastructure as a service? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. A financial institution requires strict control over its data and chooses to host its cloud services within its own physical building. Which cloud deployment model is being utilized in this scenario? Is this a private cloud, hybrid cloud, software as a service, public cloud, or infrastructure as a service? Lock in your answer by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. See what you think the answer is. Answers coming in pretty quick, I've noticed, on here. I think some of you might be familiar with some of these cloud services, these deployment models, these ways of creating cloud technologies. It's an important part of the things that we do in our technologies today. And it's another really good example of how flexible cloud-based technologies are, because you can install them in so many different ways. But of course, that means you have to remember all of those different ways, because you will be asked about that on your exam. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a financial institution requires strict control over its data and chooses to host its cloud services within its own physical building. Which cloud deployment model is being utilized in this scenario? Is this a private cloud, a hybrid cloud? Is it software as a service? Is it a public cloud? Or is it infrastructure as a service? I'm curious to see what you may have answered. We're going to close our poll and see how we did. Wow, 87% of you think the answer is private cloud. 9% of you say the answer is infrastructure as a service. And then a three-way tie for last place with 1% apiece. We have hybrid cloud, software as a service, and public cloud. Well, to be able to understand more about these cloud deployment models, let's step through what some of these are. One of the answers we have was a public cloud. Only 1% of you chose public cloud, and that would be right, because a public cloud is what we often think about when we think about Amazon. We think about Microsoft Azure. Those are clouds that anybody can access from anywhere in the universe. So that makes them very public and very available. And when we're talking about where are we going to host this cloud-based app, and somebody says, let's host it in the public cloud, they're talking about one of these large organizations like an Amazon, like a Microsoft, and the other parts of that. So you've got a few options and things to think about along those lines. But we also have other deployment models. For example, we have a deployment model that is a private deployment model, where you might have your own data center, your own money, your own infrastructure, your own people, your own configurations. And when you start working from that perspective, then you've got a scenario where you've got everything in one place. It is part of your existing network infrastructure. You own it. Nobody else has access to it because it's in your building. And you are the one that controls every bit of data that goes into that cloud and every bit of data that goes out of that cloud. Even though the cloud is sitting in your own data center, we refer to that as a private cloud. And in fact, in this answer, the financial institution chose to host its cloud services in its own physical building. That is immediately going to point you to a private cloud. 87% of you chose that, and 87% of you got that absolutely correct. Now, if you happen to have a scenario where you run a little bit of the app on the public cloud, a little bit of the app on the private cloud, if that's the scenario, you now have more of a hybrid type of configuration. So if you're in that particular scenario, you get a little bit of a mix between all of this. You've got a little bit that may be running on Amazon and a little bit that might be running in our own cloud, our own private cloud in our own data center. Those aren't very super common, although if you're talking about most organizations and their overall cloud infrastructure, it would be kind of difficult at this point for companies not to have something running in their own data center, something running on their own equipment from a cloud-based perspective, and then other types of apps that may be running on a public cloud. So I guess in many cases, you might find that most people refer to this as a hybrid cloud, but at least you've got some options there of what the important parts might be with the terms and how you would apply those terms overall. On your exam, it will be very clear what particular service they are asking about and which deployment model. We also have, for deployment models, community. We didn't have that as one of our answers on this question, but let's say you were part of a number of nonprofits in a particular area. All of those nonprofits could get together and say, why don't we, with our limited resources, all buy into a cloud-based infrastructure? We will all use them the same, but we'll share that cost amongst all of us. That would be a good example of a community-based deployment model. So you've got a few of those to work through. Maybe that gives you some ideas of things that you might want to think about from a deployment perspective, but that certainly explains why 87% of you were spot on. That is the right answer. Private cloud is a cloud-based infrastructure that is in our data center. We use it for our own purposes, and very often we're doing that so that we have complete 100% control over all of the data that goes in and out of that cloud-based system. That was the right answer. If you answered private cloud, you're part of the 87% that got it absolutely correct. Let's do another question, shall we? I'm going to keep this going. The next question in our list is this one that asks, a data center manager has been asked to provide a report of hard drive health across all servers. Which of the following would be the best way to obtain this information? Would it be SMOT reports? Would it be Ethernet interface statistics? Would it be Event Viewer? Would it be BIOS Post? Or would it be Performance Monitor? A data center manager has been asked to provide a report of hard drive health across all servers. Which of the following would be the best way to obtain this information? Would it be a SMART report? That's the SMART report. Would it be Ethernet interface statistics? Would it be the Windows Event Viewer? Would it be BIOS Post? Or would it be Performance Monitor? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. A lot of the answers coming in quick on this one. I feel like we know this one pretty solidly too. We're going to see how we do. The challenge with this question, of course, is that there could be multiple answers here that could technically do what we want, but that wasn't the question. The question specifically says which of the following would be the best way to obtain this information, and therein lies the rub. That is the challenge we're faced with, is even though there might be multiple answers that could do this, which one is the best way to do this? If you think you know the answer, follow that link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. I'm going to see how well you might know some of this content. In fact, now's a good time to find out. Let's see how you did. The question asks, a data center manager has been asked to provide a report of hard drive health across all servers. Which of the following would be the best way to obtain this information? Would it be SMOT report? Would it be Ethernet interface statistics? Would it be Event Viewer? Would it be BIOS Post? Or would it be Performance Monitor? Let's close the poll and see how you did. And with one click, we can see, again, big numbers. 79% of you think it is the wicked SMOT reports. That's what we would choose to be able to get the best way to obtain this information. 12% of you, though, said Performance Monitor is what you would use to be able to grab that information. We also have single digits, 4% for BIOS Post, 3% for Event Viewer, and 3% for Ethernet interface statistics. This is one that perhaps even a three-way tie for third place in this case as well. Obviously, most of you are leaning towards the SMART report. And if you're some of the folks that didn't know what a SMART report was, that refers to the Self-Monitoring, Analysis, and Reporting Technology, or SMART. These are metrics and statistics that are contained within the storage drive itself. The drive contains this information. For example, things like a raw read error rate or finding the spin-up time. This would be on a traditional spinning drive, for example. Things like a start-stop count. You start to see the raw numbers even associated with these. Power on hours. This drive has number of power on hours, 12,178 power on hours. So that level of detail, that type of information that you can get from SMART is so much more detailed than almost any other resource. In fact, the only way you would really get that level of detail is through a utility specifically designed to gather those statistics from those drives. This allows you to maybe get some warning signs, especially when you can analyze, are the number of errors increasing? Do we have a large amount of online time for that drive? Maybe it's getting longer and longer into its life cycle. Maybe we want to replace it before it becomes more of a risk. You can gather all of those metrics by using SMART. This is something where many people will schedule checks occasionally just to go out to every single drive, compile the statistics, and maybe keep an ongoing information, an ongoing chart or ongoing database of everything that it has found. So a great way to do that. So there's a number of metrics that the industry uses, a number of studies that have been done about when you should replace a drive and perhaps when you should not replace a drive. Some very fascinating metrics, statistics, and analysis of all of those data from very, very large data centers. So great things to look for and look at. But if you're trying to find this level of data, the only place you're going to find this is through a self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting technology built into the storage drive itself. Now, if you were going to get any type of results from here, here's a SMART analysis that I did on some of my drives where it went through all of my drives and said the SMART status is normal. This has 8 bad sector counts. The drive reconnection count is 0. The drive re-identification count is 0. But notice that a couple drives, not quite so good. You can see they're marked in red here. Even though the SMART status was normal and no bad sectors, the drive reconnection count was 14. The drive re-identification count was 1. This one had 8 and 1. And I got a message on my screen. This was from my storage array that said, you might want to keep an eye on this. You might want to have some extras available. Maybe you want to swap these drives out now. This is something we feel is important for you to keep an eye on to understand the health and perhaps availability of your storage drives. That gives me a chance, of course, to replace the drive before it really becomes a problem. That's what you would use. Hopefully, that's given you some ideas of where the best place would go. And I really didn't fool anybody with that question. 79% of you got it absolutely right. That is the SMART report. Well done. We've already seen with the questions that we've gone through so far that there's a lot of information in the A+ exam. We've not even touched on everything that's in this exam. We've talked about cloud-based technologies and different types of tools we could use and different RAID arrays, and we've talked about getting reports and other information. But there's a lot more that is even in the A+ exam. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different exam objectives. If you looked at both our Core 1 and Core 2 courses, 137 videos, over 19 hours of content. So because of that, this can be a challenge to maybe have everything from all of these training courses in one place. And so what I thought I would create was a way to provide you with that one-stop shop for all of these. And that's by using my course notes. My course notes are a way that you can have all of this information at your fingertips, either in a printed book like you see here, or a digital PDF like you see here. It's the same information. Obviously, we just print it out and send you a book that's got everything in there, or you can have it like this digital version, which of course has the same table of contents. If we were interested in the BIOS, for example, I can click there and it would take me right to that section. Maybe I'm watching that video right now, and I can follow along with the video that's right here. All of the important charts, all the important images, all of the important text, it's in these course notes. So if you're somebody who's trying to get more familiar with these topics, or you've already gone through the videos, you really just want a refresh of everything that's there, you might want to have a look at our course notes. The course notes are available, as I mentioned, in that digital edition PDF. If you want a printed version, this is the physical edition printed book. And if you purchase the printed version, I make the digital version available to you immediately. So while you're waiting for this to be delivered, we print it on demand and ship it just to you. We can, of course, provide that digital edition that you can download today while you're waiting on this to arrive. So another great way to understand what you can do, where you can go to be able to find those details. And of course, if you purchase that with a separate set of course notes or with my practice exams, you get a little bit of a price break too. There's a little bit of a discount involved. So something that you can, of course, do. I think that's going to be an easy way to keep all of that information in one place, a great reference to use during your final study section, and maybe have it so that you can look through this set of course notes rather than having to take the notes yourself. Some people are great at taking notes. Some people maybe not so great at taking notes. Either way, we got you covered with this set of course notes. You can find out more about those at professormesser.com/1201 notes. Let's keep going through some questions. I have more multiple choice questions for you. Here's the next question on our list that asks, a sales team wants to use their 5G smartphone to provide internet access to 3 laptops during a meeting at a park. Which of the following smartphone features should they enable for this connection? Should they enable Wi-Fi calling, VPN, hotspot, NFC, or GPS? All of these real things, all of these from the CompTIA exam objectives. Only one would be the best choice for this question. A sales team wants to use their 5G smartphone to provide internet access to 3 laptops during a meeting at a park. Which of the following smartphone features should they enable for this connection? Would it be Wi-Fi calling, VPN, hotspot, NFC, or GPS? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to answer that question. Let's see how you do with that one. This might be one where you're having to think about what would be the best choice. I have been in scenarios where at a moment, somebody sitting in a coffee shop, somebody that is somewhere else out outside away from an Ethernet drop or even an 802.11 connection, and they said, please show us this thing that is on the internet. Please give us a demonstration of that particular piece. No problem. Got my laptop, pull it out, and then I'll provide some type of something, some technology on my smartphone that would allow me to use my 5G smartphone for internet access. What would that be? It's got to be one of these. I think you might know already. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, a sales team wants to use their 5G smartphone to provide internet access to 3 laptops during a meeting at the park. Which of the following smartphone features should they enable for this connection? Would it be Wi-Fi calling, VPN, hotspot, NFC, or GPS? Let's see what you chose. We'll close our poll. Even bigger numbers this time. 96% of you believe that the answer is hotspot. But of course, there are other options here that, of course, are part of your exam objectives. All came in at 1% or less. We have Wi-Fi calling, VPN, NFC, or GPS. It's got to be one of these 5. 96% of you say hotspot is the answer we were looking for. I don't think we're really fooling anybody with that question. Hotspots are an important thing to know when you're working through these answers. Whenever you start getting to the details of anything that is here, whenever you start working through questions, answers, trying to pick the right one, it's often good to understand not only what the right answer was, why it was right, but what the wrong answers were and why it was wrong. So we're going to step through each one of these to understand. Obviously, hotspots are where you can take your mobile phone. Got my phone with me right here. We're going to take our phone and we're going to connect it to, it's already on the internet. It's already connected, my internet connection. Then I can turn on my Wi-Fi connection on here and enable a feature on the phone that provides hotspot functionality. I'm running iOS, so they refer to it specifically as a personal hotspot. I can't really show the screen because it has my password there. So the personal hotspot is there. You can't even see it because of the glare. But that's what they call it on iOS. I've used this personal hotspot recently. I had a trip out of the country, and where I happened to be, there was no Wi-Fi connectivity, but I had my laptop and I had my cell phone, so at least I was still on the internet to be able to use that hotspot functionality. Not all providers allow you to do that. Not all providers even have the functionality enabled on their phones. So you may want to check with your cellular phone provider and see if that feature is something that you need to enable, something that you need to pay extra for, or just maybe a feature that's built into your current plan. That is the answer we wanted. A hotspot was the answer. Wi-Fi calling is a feature that effectively allows you to use this device, this smartphone, as a phone, but be able to do that, use this device as a phone, but then have it receive and make phone calls as if it is connected to the actual cellular network, even when the cellular network is not available. So using this as a phone, and a phone, just for those of you that are curious about this, a phone is a way to communicate with other people remotely, sometimes over a wired network or a wireless network. And we do it, here's the crazy part, with voice. That's what a phone does. So that is what we're doing with the Wi-Fi calling. We're able to use this as a phone for voice communication. We also have VPN as one of the options that was here. VPN is a connection for a virtual private network. Very often allows us to encrypt data and send it through a secure tunnel between point A and point B. That wasn't our scenario here. Obviously, once we were connected to the internet, we could have also enabled VPN functionality. That wasn't the question. What the question was about, this was about making sure that we could provide internet access for 3 different laptops while at the park. We also have an NFC, near field communication. That is that very close communication network protocol interface topology that is often associated with unlocking a door. We use this when we pay for things at the store and you use your phone or you use your smartwatch. That is a very common way to do it, using NFC technology, near field communication. And then GPS obviously is for the international way to understand what's where and how it happened to be at that place. This is your global positioning system. This is why your map works on your mobile devices. This is a way that we can very precisely tell where somebody might be. We can track them very precisely from point A to point B. These are the things we often use to be able to navigate around different geographies, is that global positioning system. That is not the issue that we had. We weren't trying to navigate. We weren't trying to tell location. We don't need to know our altitude. We don't need any of that information. Instead, we just need internet access for 3 laptops. In that particular case, the only answer here that made any sense, the one that you have in this list, is indeed hotspot. That's the answer we wanted. That is the correct answer. Hopefully, there weren't very many of you that did not answer hotspot. 96% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do one that's maybe a little bit more difficult, or is it? Let's find out. The question asks, a server administrator suspects that a network interface card, or NIC, is malfunctioning due to high error rate notifications. Which of the following should be used to test the hardware interface of the Ethernet adapter? Would that be, some of these terms you've already heard today, would it be a tone generator, a cable tester, a network tap, an inductive probe, or a loopback plug? I know all of these. Were you paying attention, though? These are the questions I really like to see. Do we really remember? Or was Professor Messer just talking and then I zoned out and then I was looking at something else on the other screen? this is the scenario we run into. If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, go over to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this one might be. And whenever I'm looking at questions like this, and it wants to know what should I use, what would be the first thing I use, what would be the best thing to use, they're almost all the same question. You really have to understand not just what the right answer is, but now you have to compare that right answer, or what you think the right answer is, to every other possible answer, because now every single one of these could be the answer or an answer, but the question was about which one should be used, which one would be the best one to use, which one of these would be the first thing you would use. Those types of questions really require you to understand not just what the right answer is, but understand why the wrong answers are not the correct answer. And that can be a little bit more challenging, but it's a very common theme on the exam. Make sure you're familiar with all of those objectives, because they might all be listed in an answer, and now you need to figure out which one of these do I really choose? Which one really is the best? I need to break those apart and really get a feel for this. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a server administrator suspects that a network interface card is malfunctioning due to high error rate notifications. Which of the following should be used to test the hardware interface of the Ethernet adapter? Would that be a tone generator, a cable tester, a network tap, an inductive probe, or a loopback plug? Really, this should be 100%. We gave you the answer to this one in a previous question, which, by the way, is also a common strategy on the exam. You often see that on industry exams. This is ripped from the headline, so to speak. Let's see how we did. 100%? No, 66%. And is that even the right answer? Loopback plug. Let's find out in a moment. We have 18% that say network tap is what we would use. 6% said cable tester. 6% also said inductive probe. And then 4% say tone generator. So what would the right answer be for this one? If we look at the correct answers, it is the one that the majority of you chose. 66% of you said loopback plug, and that's because that's exactly what you could do with the loopback plug. We need to test the hardware interface of the Ethernet adapter, and a very common way to do that is with a loopback plug. It's a way to send information out one interface and then directly back into that interface, and then compare, is what you received what you sent. If it matches, then your interface is probably okay. If it doesn't match, you got bigger problems to worry about. It certainly could be an interface. There's lots of different kinds of loopback plugs. There are serial-based loopback plugs, DB9, 25-pin. You've got Ethernet loopback plugs, T1 network Ethernet plug, T1 loopback plugs, fiber-based loopback plugs. All of them very different, all with a different construction, all used for probably different interfaces, but all effectively are doing the same thing. Any traffic that goes out is looped back into itself. Keep in mind that all the terms are similar. If you see someone referring to a crossover cable, especially in the world of Ethernet connectivity, a crossover cable is not the same thing as a loopback. A crossover cable crosses over at least some of the data lines or the wires inside of a cable between point A and point B. So in point A, it's a different wire map than what you would see on point B because there was a crossover involved. There were pins that were switched from one interface on one pin to another. So that is an important thing to have. Crossover cables have their place, and there's important reasons you would use those crossover cables. But notice in that description, we weren't looping the data back into the same device. We were sending data from one device to another that is using a crossover cable that, by the way, is indeed different than a loopback cable in its pinouts, has its own format, has its own structure, and it's different depending on the topology. But loopback plugs and crossover cables, two very different things used for very different purposes, and most of the time with very different pinouts. Loopback plug is what we were looking for. 66% of you got that one absolutely correct. 2/3 of you spot on with a loopback plug. That is a great answer, and that is what we need. It would not be a tone generator, which is what we would put on one end of a wire so that we could find the other end of the wire with an inductive probe. Those are often combined together, and you'll often hear them referred to as a toner probe or a a tone generator, inductive probe combo. They're always talked about in the same breath because they are used together. 6% of you said cable tester. Cable tester, as we mentioned earlier, is a relatively simple tool that provides you with a way to confirm that pin 1 is really on one end of the cable is really connected to pin 1 on the other end of the cable, really just checking to see if you have some type of connectivity between the two. And then a network tap was the answer to a previous question where we were looking to connect to the network and capture packets. It's a permanent network connection that we would use just for analysis. In this case, that's not what we were trying to do. We were trying to test our hardware interface of an Ethernet adapter. In this case, the thing that we were looking for was indeed the loopback plug. 66% of you got that one absolutely correct. One of the things that we focus on when doing these questions is finding the right mix of difficulty and the right amount of information that we want to be able to learn. Because sometimes these topics tend to be, we know some topics really well, we might know some topics not quite as well. It can sometimes be a challenge to find the right mix of those. In this case, I think we did pretty well. 66% is a great number. You really were spot on with what we were looking for. And for those of you that answered on the other third of what we were looking for, the other 33 or so percent of you, now you know the difference between all of these. And if it comes up on an exam talking about a tone generator or a network tap or an inductive probe or a cable tester, you'll be able to get those correct as well. So another great way to think about it. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you a digitally signed email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn those CEUs is you must follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. In that, on those pages, click the link that says Contact Us. On that Contact Us page, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put June 2026 Core 1 or June 2026 A+. Any combination of those works for me so that I know where this came from. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, loopback plug, network tap. Loopback plug, network tap are your super secret code words of the month. You can also put anything else in there that you would like to send to me. I do like reading through those, but you don't have to. You can simply click the submit button, send it off, and I will receive the information on my side. It takes me about a week, sometimes less, to go through these and get them back to you, but I will get them back to you. Do not worry. That is something that will earn you, as I mentioned, a 1-hour webinar category CEU. Now, again, if you didn't hear the instructions the first time, let's quickly go through them again. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. Click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us form, put your name, your email address, and the subject line, please put June 2026 Core 1A+, or some combination of those. In the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, loopback plug, network tap, and hit that, submit it, send it over to me, and then I will return this to you as soon as we look through them, confirm that you have put everything in we asked about, make sure that you followed the right instructions because that is part of getting the CEU. And if all that works out, you'll get an email in about a week or so, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, but we will get it to you. I assure you, we will get to those eventually. There is another question I would like to do before we're done today. This is not a question I wrote during the previous week for this study group. This is a question that comes directly from my practice exams book. I was looking across the internet a number of years ago for just practice questions for A+. And what I found was not great. I found a lot of out-of-date questions. I found questions with completely wrong answers or answers that didn't make any sense whatsoever. And then I found questions that were not really written with the same style or the same tone as the actual exam. So I thought, what would be a better way to really test yourself than with an exam that was really written in the same flavor, in the same style as what you could expect to see when you sit down in the exam room. And that's why I created my practice exams for the Core 1 exam and the Core 2 exam. This is a practice exam book with 387 pages. There's a lot of practice questions in here. There are 90 questions in in 3 different practice exams. So each one of those has 90 questions associated with it, has multiple choice questions. There are performance-based questions, detailed explanations for every single answer that's in here. But I thought what we would do is maybe go through and look at a question from the practice exams book. Now, in this case, I don't have these in Vevox, so we're not going to vote on this one online. And please don't put any answers in the chat room. But let's look at this question. I'll give you at least a tour for how this practice exams book works. This is the PDF version of the practice exams book. Obviously is identical to the physical version that I'm holding in my hand here. This is on page 21. So if you went to page 21 of my book, 19, 20, 21, it would be identical to what you would see in, obviously, in this case, in the last question that's on that page. This is question A62, and it asks, a manager would like print jobs sent to a network laser printer to use paper from the 3rd tray. However, no tray options are listed when submitting the print job. Which of the following would resolve this issue? Should we restart the printer, update the printer driver, stop and restart the print server, or change the printer permissions? Now, you might have an idea what you think it is. I'm going to make some notes on this page because it's a PDF. I might want to highlight certain words. I might want to think about what we're doing with these questions. Maybe just highlight if I have something I can write with. Maybe you have you're using a tablet with some type of stylus or pen. You can write on this. And of course, you can save all of these annotations. You won't lose anything. You'll just save this PDF. And now you've got everything saved there the next time you bring this document up. Now, if you just wanted to know where the answer was A, B, C, or D, I have what I call a quick answer page, which is page 31. You can see down here, I'm on page 21 right now. So you'd have to scroll forward 10 pages for that. But I want to see the details. We'll see why in just a moment. They're on page 99. I don't like the idea of scrolling around a book, scrolling to be able to do this. So what I did, because it's a PDF, I integrated a link in those buttons. So where it says the details 99, if I click that, it takes me to page 99. In fact, if you scroll down here at the bottom, you'll see page 99 right there. So here we are, and it says, same question there. We sent print jobs to this printer. There's no tray options listed with submitting the job. What's the right answer? And I say the answer is B, update the printer driver, and I explained to you why that is the right answer. Now, my problem is when I take these exams, I get a lot of questions wrong, especially if I'm working the very first time through a certification. And what would be ideal is if something could tell me, why did I get that wrong? I thought that was the right answer. Why was I mistaken? What information is not correct about that? So in my book, every single incorrect answer is documented. So we can see why restart the printer. That was an incorrect answer. But why was that incorrect? Well, let me tell you. Restarting the printer can reconnect the printer to the print server and clear out the memory of the printer. However, the tray configuration option isn't part of the printer, and it won't change based on the printer restart. So there, we can't use that particular connection because it's not part of the printer. C, stop and restart the print server. Not the right answer. Why? Well, because we have the answer here. How about change the printer permissions? Won't that fix the issue? No, it will not, because that is why the answer is wrong right there, listed in answer D. So now we know why the right answer is right. We know why the wrong answers are absolutely wrong. And we can, of course, go through all of these to be able to work through them and learn more about what the correct answers are, why we would choose those answers, or even what these terms mean. You can find all of that, the 220-1201, Objective 5.6. The name of the video that describes this is called Troubleshooting Printers. And if you want a direct link to the video, you can either capture the QR code with your phone. That will take you right to that particular video. Or I've got the link here hard-coded in professormesser.link/1201-050601. That will also take you to that video on troubleshooting printers. And then you can, of course, come back to this. Now, once you've looked through the answers, you may think, okay, now I understand why the right answer is right. I understand why the wrong answers were wrong. I even watched the video again. I learned a little more about it. But now I want to go to the next question, which would be A63 in this case. All I have to do is go to my back button that's in my PDF reader. May not even realize your PDF reader has a back button. It does. We'll click the back button and we're back to where we started. And I can go to the next question that is on our list. That is my practice exams book. Hopefully that's giving you some perspective of things you can do to help make this a little bit easier to understand. And these practice questions are incredibly useful for helping you understand how much of this have you retained? How much of this did you grasp the first time through? Do I really know this content, and am I really ready to take the exam? Find out more about it and get either the digital, the physical, or both of those editions on our website. Go to professormesser.com/core1pe or use the main menu on our website to go directly to the Core 1 Practice Exams book. Well, as I've mentioned, everything that we've done today comes directly from the official CompTIA exam objectives. These objectives provide you with a summary of everything you could possibly be asked on this exam. Knowing that also means, here's a copy of these exam objectives, the PDF that I'm using. This is also a perfect list if I'm trying to understand what should I be studying. This also makes a great checklist to see if I've really understood everything prior to walking into the exam. The exam is nearly 100%, if not spot on 100% from these topics. They don't go outside the scope of these exam objectives. So if you happen to see one question on your exam that is outside the scope of the exam objectives, there's probably just a practice question that doesn't count towards your final score, because they stick to this list like glue. There are hundreds and hundreds of objectives in this list. So this isn't a high-level overview. This is a detailed breakdown of the individual tiny little pieces of sand on the beach here. We are looking at everything we need to know. That's what makes this a great checklist. And in the back is an acronym list. A lot of you like to study these acronyms. I don't know that it's necessary for the exam, but you might find some useful combinations of acronyms and their definitions that you could sort through. I tend to think that you learn the acronyms as you organically go through the training class. But if you're trying to remember one, this is a great one to go through to figure that out. So that is the set of official exam objectives. Oh, and did I mention they're free? You don't have to pay anything for these. So go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/objectives. This will take you over to the CompTIA website. There's a link there. We even tell you where on the page you click to be able to download these, because sometimes it's not obvious when you're going through it. That's why I put that graphic on the page. You'll have that little tutorial that will help you find it and take you directly there at professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month for Core 1 and Core 2. We also do Network Plus and Security Plus. Obviously, this is our first for June. It's June the 2nd as we make this live. And of course, our Core 1 study group. We have a Core 2 A+ study group on the 4th. So come back in a couple of days. We have our other live A+ study group. Already written the questions. It's already ready to go. All we have to do is get you here. So come on back on the 4th. We have one of those. Of course, our Network Plus study group this month is on the 18th, and Security Plus is on the 24th. We also have our July dates that we're posting now. We'll have July 7th and 9th for A+, July the 17th for Network Plus, an odd and very unusual Friday edition. That'll be fun. And then we have our 22nd of July currently scheduled as our Security Plus. These times and dates can change. I don't want them to change, but the chaos that is my world often requires me to make a change. So if I end up changing the date or changing the time, I update them immediately on our calendar. So anytime you go to professormesser.com/calendar, you are looking at the minute-by-minute most recent version of our calendar. And if I change anything, it's changed there first, and it's changed on our events channel on our Discord. I change those at the same time. So both of those are great places to go. I will usually also post something on our Discord letting people know that I changed the date and time, but you'll see it in the calendar. It'll be very obvious. I'll change the date on the YouTube side. They'll change the date on the calendars that are listed on LinkedIn and on Facebook. I change it across the board, but this is the place where we start, professormesser.com/calendar. We've gone through an hour already, a little overtime actually, but we've got more coming. I've been asking you questions this whole time. Now it's time for you to ask me questions. The way that you would do that is use that same link we were talking about earlier. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and at the top of the screen, you can click over and submit questions for what we call our after show. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. If you happen to be in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory, I'm looking at you, Mariana Islands. You can get your vouchers at a discount by going to professormesser.com/vouchers. Also let you know that our course notes, our practice exams, our success bundles, and so much more is on our website. We can take you to the next level with those additional study materials. Simply visit our site at professormesser.com/1201success or use the primary links on the website. And of course, if you're on social media, we are too. We want to be where you are. So if you are over on Discord, professormesser.com/Discord. All you need to find us on X, professormesser.com/X. You want to find us on Facebook, professormesser.com/Facebook. You get the idea. So just type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find us on. That would be a great way to hunt us down and figure out where our latest questions, answers, and more might be for studying for your exam. That brings us to the end of another hour of our first hour of the study group. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. Stay exactly where you are. Our after show is coming up next. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay. I'm going to try to make it through this next 45 minutes. What's the worst that could happen, really? We'll get rid of some of these things. We'll move this over here and see if I'm there. I'm not really there. How about here? If I hit the right button, there we go. And do that. That makes a little bit more sense, doesn't it? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the after show. This is the part of the study group, as I mentioned, where I don't have to do any prep because you're doing the prep for me. You're asking the questions. I'm really going to work through the things we need to know about all of the other pieces of the puzzle. And if you have questions about any of this, you can, of course, go through that process of finding exactly where you would like to go. I think this is, or questions you would like to know. This is a time where you can ask questions about certifications, about IT, about technology in general, or about anything else. You want to know how we do things in the studio, what type of things we work towards to be able to make these things happen. This is exactly where we'd go. Some folks are saying the links are not working for the objectives on the CompTIA site. No, they work great. But make sure that you follow the instructions. In fact, if we go to the instructions page on my site, I think I got to copy this up. There we go. So if you go to professormesser.com/objectives, you'll see a screen like this. And you can see that I have a little window here. You have direct links to the A+, Network+, Security+, and other certifications. And then I give you this little graphic that shows you have to scroll down until you hit this red box. And that is where you do the objectives from. And it even says you may need to enable cookies, disable pop-up blockers, or remove other filters to see the red box. So it's there. You just can't see it. So for example, you go over to A+ objectives. I'll click that link. Takes me over here. It says skills you learn, exam details, and there's the red box right there. So it's exactly where you would expect to find it. You put in your email address into that link. By submitting the form, I agree to the privacy notice. We'll click access now, and there's the download. Currently, the English exam objectives and Japanese exam objectives are available on that site. It's an easy way to get your access to all of that content. Yep, that's where it is. If it's not working for you, it's a problem with your browser. It's a problem with your internet connection. It's a problem with a filter. It's a problem with the firewall. There's something you're doing wrong, but we can figure it out. We can get you there. Hopefully it's given you a perspective anyway of some of the things you might do. Now is the time where I need to go to my side and be able to look through the questions that you have submitted. You can submit those questions for our second hour of the study group at any time. And you can do that by following the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and that is where you would go to submit your question. Now, it goes into a big queue that's on my side. I don't just put anything out there that you type in. Oh, no, I'm slightly more smart than that. Not much, but I know well enough not to do that on my live stream. So we don't. We look through them on our side first. And boy, we get some great stuff sometimes from all of those. But that is a good example of how I'm going to look through all of these and be able to get through it. So let me quickly, I know this one is not in this list, but it came up in the chat, and I thought, well, that's a good question to kind of discuss, because I think that that is what we should go with. The question was in the chat room, hey, professor, for a first-time learner, I'm coming from a blue-collar background. Is it possible to get into tech? Well, as many of you probably have heard if you've been on previous study groups, I come from a very rural part of the country. I come from a small town in North Florida called Monticello, Florida. It's a town that, in a county within Florida, that still does not have any red, yellow, green traffic lights. In fact, I think they might have even taken down the flashing yellow down by the fire department. I don't think that was up last time I was in town. So we may have actually removed traffic lights since the last time I spoke on this, sort of how that works. Growing up, a lot of what we did because of rural towns in the United States, for those of you who have not grown up in those environments, you grew up in a city or a relatively large geographical area, there's a lot of farming. For example, in our county, the big county fair type thing we would do, the festival that we would have would be a watermelon festival, because my particular area of Florida produces a huge number of watermelons. So that was a big deal for our farming community. And the more watermelons we could grow, the better the entire county did that year. That's sort of how farming works from that perspective. There's not a lot of other industry when you have these tiny little towns. Yeah, there's some little places to go to buy things. There's not a lot of big places. There's no Walmart where I'm from. There was no fast food where I was from. In fact, I think there might not even be any there now. You have to kind of go down to the interstate 5 miles away to find any fast food, that type of thing. So that's sort of a normal part of my world, being in the FFA, being in 4-H, and doing things that were outdoorsy were a common part of what we did growing up. And I had jobs where I would work in the field over the summer. Everybody had a job where they worked in the field over the summer, doing different things. Some people would, that's when the watermelons would ripen. So you'd get on the ground and either throw the watermelons up to the folks that were in the truck, or you'd be the folks in the truck who were catching the watermelons and putting everything in there, all done by hand. Or there were other things in other places. Maybe you were working in the field to hoe around different weeds or fix different fences, whatever it happened to be. But you were outside and you were working in those types of environments. Not really lends itself towards a technology type world. Now, obviously, technology is everywhere these days. Everybody in my hometown has a smartphone, of course. It's not like we didn't have internet connectivity. Of course, we have internet connectivity, but a lot of the industry is very focused on farming or an outdoors type of career. So that's one where you really do have to work hard to find the right place in technology. And for me, it was really more about just learning. I think the more you learn about technology, the more you find an interest in a particular area, and that eventually leads you into a job or a career in that particular area. That's what happened with me. I was fascinated with computers. I was lucky enough to get a job working when I went to college. There were some home-based computers back when I was in high school. It was not the IBM world quite yet for that PC Intel-based architecture. That happened once I was in college. Kind of dates me a little bit, I realize. And then from there, it was just finding every bit of information I could find about all of these different things. Remember, there was no internet at that time. You really focused more on periodicals, magazines. There were tons of computer magazines, tons of computer books you could read. I spent a lot of time at the library. I spent a lot of time at the bookstore, gathering as much information as I could and just reading through everything. How about programming? What about building hardware? How could you manage a networking infrastructure? How would you build this particular capability? What would you do to make that happen? And a fascinating time. And still, I would think building your own computer these days is still just as fun. It's a different experience, but still gives you that satisfaction of researching, finding all the right parts, installing them in the right way, and getting a system that will run seamlessly, perfectly, is always very self-satisfying. There's always a great feeling when you make that happen. So talk about talk about a blue-collar environment. I come from a very blue-collar environment. In this case, a literal blue-collar environment, but that's sort of where I grew up too. If I can do this, coming from that type of environment and getting to the world of technology and learn these things, and you have a drive to be able to make your knowledge turn into something useful that will eventually get you a career, that can absolutely be done. The computers don't know who you are. They don't know your background. They don't know what you know or what you don't know. They're oblivious to your family situation. They have no idea what's going on back home. It really is the perfect environment, isn't it? It's really a perfect thing to work on, because the more you know about what's inside of that device, the more you will be able to leverage that into more of a career. So I think, I've often said that computers are an incredible equalizer. In a time where we spend a lot of time online, a lot of time on our television, a lot of time in media, where we're all just sort of fighting with each other. I think it's this. No, I think it's this. Well, I hate you and I hate you too. And we all hate each other for some reason, when in fact, 90% of what we all are talking about, we all agree with. It's silly, but that's sort of the situation that the media, they pit us against each other in many ways to make that happen. So if that's the situation, if I can really start learning more about all of this content, all of this technology, and there's more coming down the line every day, well, now I can really build a nice foundation and start using that knowledge to be able to do some really interesting things and work through a lot of different environments, move up into different jobs, find different things to do in the world of technology. It's an amazing place. And I often say it's the great equalizer. It is more than just that computers bring you that equalization. They bring you a way that regardless of your background, regardless of your history, regardless of your family situation, regardless of anything else, you're able to make a career with these technologies because the computer doesn't care about any of those things. So there's a reason that we are still doing this. Last week, for example, I got the notification from YouTube that says, hey, congratulations, your first video was posted to YouTube 19 years ago. That was a video we did on Nmap, sort of a tutorial of the Nmap program. And I realized when we started putting those on YouTube, we could actually start enabling that equalization, start enabling people to be able to make a career using those things, because I had already been through the trenches. I worked as the field service technicians. I worked on the corporate help desk. I did the servers and the networking and the security. I traveled the world talking to people. I traveled the world learning from other people. It is a fantastic way to have a career, support your family, support yourself, and support others. And it's something that you can just enjoy doing, and it's different every day. So what could be better than that? There's been a lot of talk recently about, yes, but AI is going to replace all of us. No, as you can see, not even coming close. Not even for the vast majority of information technology, we got no worries with the current flavor of AI. Now, obviously, if you're in the world of computer science, which is not what we do here, the computer science people probably have more to worry about than the information technology people. But I would say even their world is probably in a pretty good place as far as what we are calling AI is concerned. So I think this is the time. Now, if you wanted to be that smartest person, you will be even smarter now, because there will be fewer smart people in our industry. And I think you're going to start seeing a shift there as we get into this. As a follow-up to that, somebody said, well, what about what age you happen to be? A lot of people come into this type of certification program or trying to get a job in IT or get a next job in IT, and they're just out of college or they're in their first IT position currently, and they're relatively young. I say relatively because I'm an old guy. But when we think about age, we're always thinking about what other people think about our age. This is another great situation. The technology we're using doesn't know how old you are. Thankfully, it doesn't know how old I am when I'm using it, because I've now created this knowledge base. I can communicate and work with these devices. They don't know if I'm 18. They don't know if I'm 81. This is fantastic. So as long as you have the knowledge and you are able to communicate with yourself, others, and the computers themselves, you're in a pretty good place. In fact, I would argue that really communication with other humans many times is more important than the way you communicate with your technology. So I think that's really the hardest part for most of us is the human to human communication. Ironically, that tends to be some of the most important communication in our industry. So that's all. I sort of packed a whole lot into one single question or two questions there, but I think that gives you some idea of how I approach this. If I can do this from a background, a very relatively simple background that had nothing to do with technology, and build that into a career that has spanned over 20 years working for some of the largest technology companies in the world, and ultimately building out our own way to train the world with these technologies, I think anybody not only can do it, I think anybody should do it. Now we don't want everybody in the technology industry and then there'd be no jobs left, but I think the idea is still there that anybody of any age can get into doing this. It's different when you're a little bit older. And we can talk about that too. If somebody wants to break down sort of my philosophy on how you get into the industry as a youngster and how you get into the industry as someone who's maybe working on their second career, there's differences there. There's slight differences, but differences nonetheless. And if you wanted to go into that and break that down, we can talk about that stuff too. So certainly an idea to think about as we step through these. Let's go through some questions that you have submitted to me. Let's start with this one from my good friend Anonymous, who asks, I am studying for Security Plus and A+. Do you think that is too much? Yes. Next question. That's a lot. Why? My natural next question is, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind? What in the world? Are you doing both at the same time? That's really 3 exams. 3. You're doing Security Plus, A+ Core 1, and A+ Core 2. Do I think that's too much? One of them is too much. So that's a lot. Just take one of those at a time and it's too much. So I will give you the same advice I give everybody when it comes to really even the A+. This comes up also a lot when people say, I'm going to take both my A+ exams on the same day. What? Why? Are you not feeling well? Have you lost your mind? Is there something wrong with you? Don't do that. Now, if you are somebody who's already been in the industry for years, you just need to take this A+ exam to check a box that your employer wants you to check. Sometimes that does happen. I get it. It's very rare, but sometimes that does happen. Those types of people probably could walk into the exam and take both on the same day. I could probably do that on the same day. I don't think there'd be a problem with me going in and taking both of those in the same day. But for the vast majority of everybody else, that is not what you want to do. There's very, very little overlap between the Security Plus exam or even overlap between the 2 A+ exams themselves. So don't try to take more than one exam at a time. There's really no reason to do that because there's no logistical advantage to making that happen. If anything, it's a logistical disadvantage because you now have to remember a lot more content all at the same time and then be able to walk into an exam room and pass these exams. It's just too much information. And there's no good reason to do it that way. Because there's so little overlap between all of these, focus on one exam at a time. Go take the A+ Core 1. Go through every objective in the A+ Core 1. Go through a set of labs associated with the A+ Core 1. Read a book associated with the A+ Core 1. Maybe even take some practice questions that are specific to, you guessed it, the A+ Core 1. Don't look at anything else. Don't look at Core 2. Don't look at Security Plus. Don't look at Network Plus. Don't do that. Focus on that exam. Go in, take the exam, pass the exam, then you can forget all of that. You're not going to, but you could. Because now you can shift your gears over to Core 2 or to Network Plus or whatever the next thing is going to be. Focus on Core 2, read all of your Core 2 books, watch all your Core 2 videos, do your Core 2 labs, do your Core 2 practice questions, go in and take the Core 2 exam, pass that exam. You can forget all of that at that point if you want to. Then finally, change your focus over to Security Plus if that's what you want to do. So one at a time. There is practically no advantage to squeezing them all into the same time frame. And pretty much every disadvantage I can think of is squeezing them all into the same time frame. It's just not a good bet. So don't do that. Don't go like that. It hurts when you go like that. Don't go like that. And I think that's probably the best advice I can give is no. Don't do that. No. That's not great. You don't want to work in that type of environment. And you're not going to do well in all three of them. And you're not even going to learn everything you need to learn. You're of course, most of us, I think, are passing these certification exams so that we have some credentials that we can show a prospective employer. But you're also going through these exams to learn something. We often lose sight of that part. Oh, we're actually learning. We're sitting through, yes, we are learning about these motherboards. We're learning about this security. We're learning about this networking. We're learning about this cloud technology. We're learning. So I think that's where you really want to focus on not just the time frame and the investment and how much you need to know at any particular time, but don't you want to be better when you're done with the exam? I think you do. So that's why I tell you, make sure you make that happen. As a corollary to that, we always need a corollary. This is also from my good friend Anonymous. Do you recommend taking the exams close together? Why? What are you doing? Why are you doing this to yourself? No, I don't. I want you to study for one exam at a time. Now, if it happens to be that you're able to study very quickly and you can get through an entire study session for all the objectives and be able to respond back and explain every single one of those objectives, and you can do that in 3 weeks, maybe that's your definition of close together. That's even kind of tight. On average, it tends to take 2 to 3 months for people to get through a single exam. Some people take a little bit shorter. Some people take a little bit longer. It's a pretty long curve if we look at it. So I think there's a lot of variability there, but we tend to have people focus on one exam at a time. That's the idea. So focus on that, and I think you'll be fine. Let's go back to more questions that you happen to have. We got lots of them here. I think there's a few here. I want to bring up something that comes up from time to time on the CompTIA website. And this is a question. Let's bring up the question from Nathan. It's from somewhere out Montana, somewhere out there with the big sky country. Got my Network Plus certification last week. Congratulations, Nathan. Nathan says, I noticed that I was issued by CompTIA a stackable cert called the CIOS. Are these stackable certifications from CompTIA worth anything on paper? Thank you for everything you do, Professor. Well, they're worth something, obviously. You passed more than one exam. You earned more than one certification. And CompTIA has put a number of those certifications together into what they call a stackable certification. Now, the challenge with this, of course, is that it appears on paper as if you are more credentialed than you really are. Let me show you what I mean. This is from the CompTIA website. CompTIA stackable certifications. What's your perfect stack? And so they're asking about really detailing the stackable certifications in here. The one that Nathan got was the CIOS. I think I read that properly, right? It's the CIOS. The CIOS. Well, if we go to the stackable definition, the CompTIA IT Operations Specialist is the CIOS. This stacks together if you have an A+ certification and you have a Network Plus certification, then you also have the CompTIA IT Operations Specialist stackable, which is the CIOS. And they explain this as an IT operations specialist manages the flow of a workplace and optimizes day-to-day activities. In this role, you will analyze business operations and identify customer needs. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that really explains that very well, but that's what they put. That's the copy. That's what we're going with, everybody. That is the CIOS. Notice they also have a CSSS, which is the CompTIA System Support Specialist. They also have CCAP, the CompTIA Cloud Admin Professional. We have the CNIP, which is the CompTIA Network Infrastructure Professional. And then we have the CompTIA CLNP, which is the CompTIA Linux Network Professional. Now, it's very nice that CompTIA went through the process of creating these stackable certifications for us. So at least there's a connection there. Microsoft's been doing this for years. Like if you get this, pass this exam, and you pass this exam, you can call yourself this. It's sort of in that particular vein. The problem with stackables, if you can really call this a problem, is that employers don't know about them. Employers don't know that you have a CIOS stackable certification. They don't even know what that is. And if you put it on a resume saying that you're CIOS certified, they'll be going, yeah, but we really were hoping to get A+ in Network+. Well, that's what that is. You got the CIOS. That's A+ in Network+. No, that's not what you said. You said CIOS. I don't know what that is. That's our problem, is that the employers or the people that would be impressed by the credentials don't know about the stackable part. It's really more about us being able to tell other people, I guess. It's for our own personal use right now, at least. So we can brag about it. Gives us gives us a little street cred, gives us a little bragging rights. I'm fine with that. But it'd be nice if the employers knew more about them. And if they don't, there's very little, hey, we can really make out of that. We would really, I was hoping, since these stackables have been out a number of years, that we would start to see more of them show up in job postings. I'm just not seeing it yet. Maybe this will be the year for it. Maybe we'll start to be doing that. And I'm not sure that that will be the case, but at least we have some feel for what some of those might be. And maybe employers will start using those certifications. Who knows if that's the case? Okay, let's keep going through our list. A lot of great questions here, by the way. Thank you for sending these in. I know we've got some time left, so I really want to make that happen. This one speaks to me. This is one I could have written, but I didn't. Christian wrote this and said, "Hey, Professor, been studying for the 1201 for about 2 months. I think I was ready about a month ago, but I get terrible nerves during the tests. How do you recommend people deal with exam taking and double guessing yourself during the test period? I feel that's my biggest issue, even in practice exams. I am an awful test taker as well. Horrible. I hate the lead up to the exam. It's not really the exam itself. I feel like I prepare properly. I feel like I even spend additional time preparing because I really want to be solid when I walk in the door of that exam. When we start the exam, I really want to know the content. I don't ever want there to be a case where, well, that's the topic I didn't study. Like, well, why didn't you? All you've got is time. So of course you should study these things. But whenever I go to the exam center, and this is sort of me in general, I think I'm a kind of an anxious person when it comes to things like this, because these are important things. These certifications, earning that credential is an important thing to me. And so I get more nervous about it. I get more anxious about it because it's important. So there's good reason that you feel this way. First, know that that's the case. You're feeling anxious not because something's wrong with you. You're feeling anxious because something is right with you. This is exactly where you should be. So in many ways, just wrap yourself, just put that anxious feeling into a big bear hug and say, thanks for being here. Otherwise, we wouldn't know that this was important. The other thing I do when I sit down in the exam room, they bring me in, they check my ID, they take my picture, they give me my little whiteboard, they take me into the exam room, we sit down in the chair, and I can already feel, okay, the blood's starting to pump. I'm starting to get that adrenaline hit where you're reading things on the screen, but you're not really understanding anything that you're seeing. It's English. I clearly see that's English that I'm reading. I clearly see there's a question there that this person was a network administrator and they're trying to find a way to back up the thing. And I'm like, what was that question again? So it's all a blur. For the first 10 minutes of me sitting in this room, I might as well be in a different country reading a completely different language because I can't interpret what I'm seeing because I'm so hyped up. Kind of have to let the adrenaline burn itself off a little bit. And then I start getting into the groove and really zoning into what we're doing. And then I'm hooked in and then I can finally get through the exam. So what I tend to do, this is really specific to CompTIA exams, but other exam manufacturers have a similar thing. When you sit down for your exam, you don't actually start the exam right away. The first thing that is presented to you is the CompTIA candidate agreement. This is effectively, it's kind of a non-disclosure, but there's more to it than that. This is a copy. I just Googled the CompTIA candidate agreement, took me right to the page. They have it in English and French. You can look at it. And it gives you, it is a contract that you are going to agree to before they give you the exam. And they give you like 15 minutes to read over this. That's what I need. I need 15 minutes so that I could kind of settle in, start being able to understand English again, really get into the mode of why I'm here, what I'm doing. And so what I do is I just read through it. For the purposes of the agreement, terms defined in the section will have the meaning set forth below. Candidate information means all information. I'm just sort of counting sheep at this point. It's something mindless. In fact, what I would recommend is go read through this candidate agreement now. And when you go to the exam room, you already know what's in here. So you really don't have to read it. In fact, most people who don't suffer through debilitating nervousness, they'll just say, yep, I agree. They won't even read it. They'll scroll to the bottom. Yes, I agree. And they're off to the next thing. Oh, I envy you people. That is not what I do. I start at the top and I just read it. I got 10, 15 minutes, whatever that time frame is they give you. And I'll just sit there for 10 minutes. I'll just read through it. Oh, candidate information. Yeah, it can, they may collect, save, transmit, transfer, use, deliver, and otherwise process candidate information for analysis, research. Clearly, lawyers worked hard on this one. A lot of commas, a lot of things, a lot of legal stuff. Here's privacy policy information. I authorize, you can disclose my name, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, here's the certification. And they just read through it. Just go through the details. Most of this might not even apply to you. Out of country testing. No, I'm in my own country. I'm reading it anyway. I got 10 minutes. Use the time. Use every minute of that time frame they give you, because that's going to give you a chance to kind of settle in, kind of get a feel for the room, start to hear the air conditioner blowing again. Other people are kind of going in and out over here. Maybe they gave you earplugs. You can put your earplugs in. Out of country testing. You must register for examination using it. Got that in your ears. Maybe test out your pen on the whiteboard. Try to read through as much of this as you can. Even though you've already read it, you already know what the rules are. You already know what you can do. You already know what you can't do. This is just your chance to calm down. Chill out. Take it easy. Go all the way to the bottom. When you are finally ready, we've now gotten it out of our system. We've wasted 10 good minutes of our life. We can now click the continue button and actually start the exam. And at that point, I find that I'm now able to understand the questions a lot better, and I can jump right into the exam right away and start working through it. Now, there's also other things to think about. You've got probably performance-based questions are coming up first. How are you going to handle those? Do you address them? Do you skip them? Do you read them? What do you do? You have to make that decision. Maybe skip over to the multiple choice, run through as many multiple choices as you can, circle back to the performance-based questions. Hopefully, you've been watching the clock. There's enough time there, and you can submit your exam. That's how, hopefully, it will go. We all have to, I think everybody has to deal with some level of anxiety. Everybody has some uncomfortable feeling when they walk into an environment like this. It's really more about how you were able to handle it yourself. And maybe it is noise. Maybe it's where you are at that time. Maybe it's just a nervousness of getting this thing done and worrying about the investment that you made in purchasing the voucher. And now there's money on the line and there's a job on the line. And those are big stakes. Admittedly, those are important stakes. And that's the reason you are very anxious about getting that done. But use some of those tools. And if you haven't gone through the process of understanding why you get anxious yet, this will be a great time to do a little bit more of self-learning on, are there things you can do to make it better for yourself? Should you be breathing differently? Should you breathe in and out? Should you relax? Are there things you can do prior to walking into the room? There might be. Everybody is a little bit different with their weirdness. And I've got plenty of weirdness that I could work through. Everybody does. You need to find what thing works best for your weirdness and just embrace it, go with it. You're not going to be able to get rid of it. You're not going to be able to avoid it. You're not going to be able to ignore it. You have to deal with it. And that's something that kind of is an important consideration. In the chat room, somebody's saying, can I bring foam earplugs? You might be able to. Many testing centers will provide them for you, But you can always ask them, hey, I brought these earplugs and this thing right here. It's already self-contained. It's already zipped up there. Can I use these? They may allow that as well. You might want to call them prior to going. If you're going to an exam center, hey, can I use these earplugs? Or they'll say, oh, we have some for you. Don't worry about it. We got you covered. And that would be fine too. Let's go back to questions. More questions in this list. Okay. Next on this list, lots to go through here. A lot of good questions on here. A lot of folks going through a lot of good Linux questions this week, by the way. Thank you for that. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to any of these. This sort of, before we even get to the exam, we got bigger problems to deal with. Let's talk about what Frank's going through. Are his questions about. Frank has the same problem, by the way, all of us have, in saying, I am finding studying every day a challenge. My continuity's improved, but what recommendations do you have to stay committed and focused, please? You know, whenever you get into certification studies, it's interesting because it's not something you're able to do in a week. It's probably not something you're going to be able to do in a month. This is a commitment. This is a long-term commitment that's probably more than a month to be able to do this. And because of that, from my perspective, and everybody's different, of course, but I like to have a little bit of structure. I like to have, at a certain time of the day, I know that I've got a certain amount of time blocked away to do this studying. So maybe Monday through Friday is a certain time frame. And then on the weekends, it's a little different because the weekends are different. But that is one that I find is important, is have a schedule. Maybe you get up 30 minutes earlier than you used to, kind of get your morning stuff done, but then you've got a 30-minute block before you have to leave the house where you can kind of go through some topics. Maybe instead of driving, you take the bus or you take the train because now you have time to read. Those can be very useful changes. Or just set up a standard schedule. Now, I realize for a lot of us, there's life and there's chaos and there's kids and there's family and there's responsibilities and there's a job we're already working and there's things we have to do and things we have to handle. We may not have the structure required to be able to have something every single day. But having at least a little block of time that you can pull in this content, look at just a handful of objectives, read through a couple of objectives, get them into your brain, go off to the next thing. Even if you're doing it in 15-minute chunks, maybe you're driving from home to work, work to home. You could listen to the videos while you're doing that. You can, when you get there, maybe stay a little bit late and spend an hour reading through, sort of at a library, at your place of work. If you're able to do that, you can stay at your desk an hour and read through this and then come home. Because one of those challenges, of course, is once you get home, you don't have a huge amount of control over your time. Before you get there, you may be able to carve out a little extra time. So there are always gives and takes. There's always going to be some type of sacrifice with time, with people, with responsibilities. You're going to have to balance that yourself. But you just need to recognize that somehow you need to carve that time out to be able to make the studies happen. Now, day-to-day study, I think it's very useful to also have a structure there. For example, let's bring up the exam objectives again. This is the thing that I kind of see people, they will just grab their book. They got 15 minutes and they'll just read 15 minutes in the book and then they put the book down. That might work for you. For me, I prefer to have a certain group of things I'm trying to do. So let's, for example, go to section 2.5. Let's say I've worked and studied up to section 2.5, which says compare and contrast common networking hardware devices. This includes routers, switches, both managed and unmanaged, access points, patch panel, firewall, power over Ethernet, including injectors, a switch, and PoE standards. We also need to learn about a cable modem, DSL, ONT, NIC, and MAC. So that's about, if I were to count the number of objectives, and I count them a little weird on my side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 or 14 different objectives are there. Well, maybe I don't have time to go through all of those in one sitting. Maybe I just take the first 2 or the first 3, which would be routers, managed switches, and unmanaged switches. Those are 3 things to know. Let's learn everything we can about those 3 things. We'll just stay with that. Let me watch the video on this. Let me read that section in the book. Maybe there's a lab I can do. Maybe I don't have time for that. But at least I've now got into my brain. I know what a router is. I know what a managed switch is. I know what an unmanaged switch is. And I know how to compare and contrast those. There you go. That was 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That was it. You probably have 15 or 20 minutes during the day. And now I've got those topics down. Now tomorrow, I go the next 3. Access points, patch panel, firewall. Let's do those 3. You don't have to take a large chunk at a time, or in my case, even an unknown amount at a time. Knowing that I'm only going through 3 things at a time allows me to focus. I'm not getting overwhelmed because these objectives, I mean, look at these objectives. These are easily overwhelming. These are monster-sized objectives. These are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of objectives. So because of that, make sure that you first understand the scope of what you're working with. Pick a scope that is manageable, that is not overwhelming, and then just study those things. And you may think, well, it was only 15 minutes. I need to study 4 hours a day. Well, do you have 4 hours a day? I don't have 4 hours a day. Most people don't have 4 hours a day. So you have 15 minutes a day. You have 30 minutes a day. That's all you get. So take it. It's surprising how quickly those 15 and 30-minute chunks add up. You don't think of it at the time, but as you're just taking a nickel a day and putting it into the list, and then when you look back, you're like, well, here's a bucket full of nickels. I had no idea there was a lot of stuff there. So that's the scenario you're in, is people will look at this objective list and they'll think, oh, forget it. Why am I even? This is not humanly possible. What am I thinking? I've made a horrible decision about my career. My family's now going to hate me. I'm going to have to leave, maybe change my face. I'm going to need to go to a plastic surgeon. Maybe I can grow a beard or something. Maybe that's what I did. Maybe, but that you're reading way too much into it. It's not even close to being that bad. Just take it 15 minutes a day. Go through a couple of these topics. None of these topics are so complicated that you're going to have to spend time wondering what you did with yourself. This is not any type of molecular analysis of anything. We're not talking about the weirdness of the multiverse. We're just talking about routers and switches. That's it. So that's why I think that's what helps me, is the small chunks. And you'll notice not a lot of the structure of our training course series was based around that methodology, that concept of I may not have an hour a day. I might have 15 minutes a day, because when I started doing this, that's how much time I had. So if I only have 15 minutes, what can I get right now? And that's why most of our training videos are somewhere around 5 to 10 minutes in length. The average is somewhere in there. Sometimes it goes into 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I get it. And sometimes I can't chop it up to be smaller than that and still maintain the momentum. But most of them are relatively short for that reason. So you can start with the video, then maybe read a little more about it, and then maybe do a lab or do some practice questions, and then go to the next thing. So that's my perspective of it. That's where I come from when I'm looking at studying. That's what focuses me. That's what allows me to stay committed. Maybe that's something that can help you too. We got time for more questions. Let's keep going through the list. And by the way, we do this all the time. People take these exams all the time. I get messages every day, multiple messages in our Discord of people passing these exams all the time. There's nothing special about those people that's any different than you. We often think that these people that are in these, they have tons of certifications. They have such knowledge in the industry. They've been doing this for so long. It just comes so natural to them. Well, it didn't start that way. They started knowing nothing about anything they're talking about. They used to be completely oblivious to all of it. So we all have to start somewhere. We all have to learn from something. This is your opportunity to start building that foundation. And one day, people are going to look at you and go, that guy knows everything. He knows all this stuff about the networking and the cloud. And how do you even get up to that? How do you even go to there? That is a completely normal thing. More questions. I think we have more to, we can stick another one in here. Since we've been talking about sort of our mental health perspective of certifications, we're going to keep this party going. Moises asks, hi, thanks to you and my teachers, I was able to pass both exams, got my A+ certification. Yay. Congratulations, Moises, on your new A+ cert. Moises continues, funny enough, the day I was taking my final exam, I was called for a phone interview at a local government office. After another interview and a long process, I have been hired, and I start next Monday as an IT technician. If I had a band to play, if there was applause and music and confetti from the sky, we would be listening and seeing that right now. Congratulations on your new job. This is what we're talking about. This is the pathway that gets you going. And this is, Moises, this is just the beginning. This is great. But there's always something, right? Here's our something. Moises says, I'm feeling nervous and some imposter syndrome. What advice and tips do you have for when I start? And here is the secret about technology that people in technology often will not tell you about. And that is, most of us don't know what we're talking about most of the time, because there's always something in there. We know 90% of what we're talking about. There's this 10% that we just don't know yet. There's a certain percentage. And when you broaden it out to other topics, it even goes wider than that. Nobody in technology knows everything, because it is impossible for one person in technology to know everything. And that includes you, which can be good and can be bad. This is the problem, though, is that we get into these jobs thinking, oh, our employer is going to expect us to be knowledgeable in every single one of these things right out of the gate. They're going to expect us to already understand where to click, where to go, where to download, where to log in, how to do this. In reality, they're not, though. We may think that they are expecting that from us, but even our employers know there's a ramp. There's a learning process here. And they're absolutely aware of this, and they're very clear on it. If you get into a very big company that is doing either IT, maybe they're a product manufacturer, they make firewalls, they make servers, they make operating systems, they make virtualization software, they do something relating to that. If you're getting into those companies, they even tend to have a 1-2 week training program before you even do anything. They're already training you. So they don't just throw you out on the street and go do that job. They're going to give you their company's perspective on these technologies. They're going to give you tips and tricks on how you should go about doing the job. They're going to give you, if it's a technical position, they'll be teaching you technical topics. If it's a more of a corporate selling position, they're going to give you sales techniques. They're going to train you in those things so that when you go in front of a customer, you're going to be very knowledgeable on these topics. You're still not going to be perfect. You're still not going to know everything. In fact, you'll very often not know everything. When I was most of my career, I worked for a manufacturer of a product. I worked for Network General, who made the sniffer, and I was the systems engineer who represented that product at a technical level. I worked for McAfee, and we supported all the McAfee products. I worked for Palo Alto Networks, and I supported all the Palo Alto Network products. So when we are doing that, you go into these meetings with people with some of the biggest companies in the world. You go to Atlanta, you meet with a large retailer, and they have thousands of stores, and they tell you, hey, we need this product to be able to perform this function or this sub-feature of OSPF. Does your product support this sub-feature within that's buried in the OSPF specification? Now, I knew, of course, that our product supports OSPF as part of its dynamic routing, but I don't have any other customers using that functionality within OSPF. OSPF is a huge standard, has tons of functionality. Not every feature of OSPF is always implemented into a manufacturer's routing software. So there may be 95% of the OSPF specification may be in that product, but this customer may be wanting to use the 5% that we don't have in OSPF, but I don't know. And so in meetings like that, you get very comfortable in saying, well, I don't know. Does anybody use that other than you? You can almost make a joke about it. I've never had anybody at any of these other large companies we go to deal with that perspective of OSPF, but I know exactly who to talk to within our organization that can tell me yes or no, we do that or we don't know. So I will find out. Part of, I think, being really good in technology is being able to say the words, I don't know. I think a lot of the times we want to guard ourselves or pretend that we really do know. Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with that feature of OSPF. I'm glad you asked me that question about OSPF. I was just looking through, and you try to, they can smell it. They know you're fooling them. They know you're trying to get out of this one. Don't even bother. Just, I don't know. How am I supposed to know that? Of course I don't know, but I do know who can tell us. And that's when you go back to a product manager, you go back to a technical support team, you go back to that person on your team who's very familiar with OSPF because they've been using it their whole life. Hey, do we do this with OSPF? They go, oh, yeah, we do. Or no, we don't. They'll tell you. Well, let's get it in. And then there's different things you do. If we support it, let me show you how we support it. If we don't support it, maybe that's a feature request we make for a future version. And you can tell me how you'd like to use that, and we implement it, et cetera, et cetera. You've probably seen this all the time from the other side of the desk. Well, that's what we do over on the manufacturing side, is we have to know that. Now, hopefully you know most of the question they're asking, but looking back in my career working as a systems engineer and going to 3 or 4 meetings a day, meeting with customers and trying to find out what about their firewall is not currently working, what about this firewall would really help them a lot, what things are important to them when it comes to security on their network. Those are important conversations. But sometime in that meeting, somebody's going to ask me a question I don't know. And every single meeting, that usually is going to be the case because every company is a little bit different. Every company does things a certain way. Every company has a different priority on what features are important and what features are not. And there's no way, even though I work for the company, even though I'm very familiar with the technology, even though that's all I do all day, every day, there's still things about that platform I simply do not know. So, because you can't, it's impossible. So as the sooner you become more comfortable in your ignorance, the faster you're going to move up in your career. It's kind of doesn't make sense, does it? You've now come to the stark realization that you are definitely oblivious to certain technologies, that you either are not well read, you haven't even touched that technology before, you're not very familiar with how it works on the inside, it's just not something you've ever used. The more comfortable you get in telling people, oh, I've never touched that before, let's do that. Let's really dive into it. Let me do some reading. Let me ask some people. Let's get a configuration going on this. That'll be a new thing I get to learn. If you approach it from that perspective, it works out very well. So here's the thing that they also don't tell you. Every single person in the room has imposter syndrome. Every technical person in the room has some level of imposter syndrome. And I would argue you want that. You want to constantly be learning. If you're not being pushed and you're not learning new things, you are in the wrong place. If you walk into a technical meeting and everybody looks to you as the one person in the room that knows everything, you're probably in the wrong room. That's probably not your job right now. You have worked yourself up to a level where you no longer have to push yourself, where you no longer have to learn new things, where you no longer are driving towards that, where you don't have the proper amount of imposter syndrome. You need a certain level of imposter syndrome to continue to improve in this industry. And as we've already seen, just in the past year, the past 2 years, the past 3 years, the technologies are coming fast and they're changing constantly. So I would also tell you, embrace the imposter syndrome. We are much more willing to help people who say, I don't know, can you show me? Than working with people that say, yes, I'm very, very aware of that. Let me go Google that real quick. What did the Google say? What did the AI tell me to do that was completely wrong? I'll have to look and see what these things are. That's a worse situation. Somebody who pretends that they know is a much bigger problem than somebody who simply tells you, I don't know, but we can figure it out. And that's one of the great parts about technology, I think, is We have been taught in our culture, I think, at least in the US, that learning is boring, that learning is hard, that learning is not something I want to do. I have to learn something today. I don't want to learn anything. Why are we learning? But in reality, that's the only thing that gives you an interest throughout the day. Oh, something new. I've never done this before. Show me that thing again. How do we make that happen? How can we plug these things together? Do we have the ability to do this? What types of things can we work through? That is the one that I think is probably more exciting to me. I loved going to work every day and having something new. I loved going to work every day and being challenged. Hey, does it do this? Oh, I don't know. That would be kind of cool. Let's see if it does. Let's try it ourselves. Let's call somebody. Let's get somebody who's familiar with this. Let's fly someone in for that. If you're not constantly learning from that, that's a very boring day. That's a very bad way to go through your career, and it puts you behind because the rest of the industry is moving forward and you're not moving anywhere. The only way to improve in this industry is to keep going and to keep making all of those decisions about where you go from here. I couldn't stand it if I walked into the room every day and I just knew every answer and then I walked out and that was me every day. I'm just repeating things at that point. What's new? You're not going to be able to do anything at that point. So don't put yourself in that position. Have a look at, as you go through your career, you'll find this. You will find that, well, I've been working in this help desk for 6 months. I kind of feel like I know everything at this point. That should be your sign to look at the next step. What is the next thing? We often go to these interviews and people say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you've got to come up with some weird thing about, oh, I see myself in this. I don't know. It's 5 years. The world of IT, 5 years is a lifetime. There's so many things that have happened a 5-year period that you really can't even think that far ahead. I think a better question would be, what's next for you? After you're done, you're going to get in this position, you're going to crush this help desk position, you're going to be 6 months in, and then you realize after 6 months, you've got it. You've got help desk down. What's your next step? Oh, I want to learn about Linux. Oh, I'm really interested in cloud-based technologies. I would love to be someone in networking. You need to have an interest because that's going to kind of push you in a direction and lead you down a road where there will be more curiosity, where there will be more interest, where you will want to learn more about those things. And that takes you to the next level, and repeat and just keep doing that over and over and over and over again. And when you look back after 5 years and you think, well, they asked me 5 years ago where I would be, I would have never thought it would have been here. That's how it seems to always work out in IT. Things just move way too fast to think that's going to be the case. We've gone through also in our industry a bit of a challenge here lately with AI promising things that it turns out didn't come true. And so where we thought that the world was over for technical people and they told us we will never need a technical person again, we will just have AI doing things, the agentic systems running on our platforms will take care of everything. Turns out it didn't work out that way. We would still be many, 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 many moons away from having to be at anything close to what that would be, which means you now get to be the smart people. You now get to be the ones pushing this. You now get to be the ones that are curious. You now get to be the ones working on the new technology, and you get to be the ones that are really now even more so the smartest ones in the room. This is what we're losing. I fear that we are going to lose more smart people to doing mindless reiterations of what somebody else or some other system told us. In some cases correctly, in some cases not even close to it. But somebody needs to sift out all these problems once they're made. And that's going to be you. You're going to be the one to do that. So you're going to be, I predict, even more important going forward than we've ever been in the past, probably because there's going to be fewer people available that actually know these things. I hope it actually doesn't become quite as dire as that sounds, but I don't like the trend. I think we need to work even harder to be the smarter people right now, because there's going to be some need, it's probably a big need, to fix the problems that are suddenly going to, well, that have cropped up in our latest world of technology. You're going to be the ones to fix that. So it's a great place to be. There could be no better place right now. We're also coming off of this crazy, let's fire everybody so we can have AI. Oops, that didn't work. Let's start hiring people back. And we're starting to see the change. We're starting to see the momentum shift a bit. Is it going to grow into something? Well, we're going to keep watching that, but you got to be prepared. And that's one of the things that it's important. The opportunities can show up at any time. Very often people say, oh, I lucked into that one. I was so lucky to have found that particular opportunity. Not with technology. There's no luck involved. You have to have already built the foundation. So when the opportunity comes along, you are perfectly built to fit into that particular opportunity. That is, I guess, if there is a definition of luck, that's what it is. It's that preparation and perspiration and whatever that crazy saying is. It's really true. We have to prepare to be lucky. You can't just wait for it to kind of fall down on your head, go, oh, look, I have a fantastic job and family and career now. It takes a lot of work to get to that point, but it's absolutely doable. You just have to put together the strategy, come up with what you're interested in, and just drive towards that. That is effectively everybody in IT who has become to any level with their career, that has really worked into the jobs they wanted. That's what they do. Well, I think that's probably a good place to start. I did a little bit of overtime today. I apologize. We got there, though. There's so much more that we're going to be doing. You'll notice in our calendar, we skip a week, and then we're back, I guess, at the end of the next week to do our Network Plus study group. If you ever want to have a look at our calendar, simply go to professormesser.com/calendar. I guess it would be good if I could do it, calendar, and do that on my screen. You can go over to our calendar page where we have a list of our Network Plus will be on the 18th, our Security Plus on the 24th of June. You'll have them all there to be able to sift through. Make sure you have a look at what is of interest to you. Lock yourself in. We'd love to have you back on this. We're doing our Core 2 study group in 2 days. If you enjoyed this one, come on back on Thursday. We'll do another one there as well. I want to thank you so much for joining us for the Q&A in our first hour. We can't do that without you. And thank you for your great questions in hour 2. We've got much more to go through. We'll be over on Discord after this, and then we'll see you on Thursday for our Core 2 study group. If you're watching this on the replay and you want to know when our next live event is going to be, it's always on our calendar. Go on over to professormesser.com/calendar. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.